Hello friends, so today we're starting a new vlog. I have Miss Bella Bean here to help with the intro.
Hi.
Anyways, so I recently put up a poll on my community tab. Thank you so much if you voted and participated in it. I appreciate it. And I asked you guys what theme vlog you would be most interested in seeing next. It was a pretty close call between two, but what ended up winning out was Unhinged Women at 39%, and then Cozy Horror actually came in second place at 34%. So that will be my next vlog theme, so stick around to the end and I will give you guys a sneak peek into a couple of the books that I will be reading in that vlog. But let's focus on this vlog. So we're gonna focus on Unhinged Women. So I picked out a few books that I already had on my TBR, and then I recently watched Katie Coulson's video on her recommendations for books that have to do with Unhinged Women. So I also grabbed one of the recommendations from her video. I will link her channel and that video in the description box down below. So reading plans for this video. I have 3 books picked out for this vlog. First, I'm going to read Death in Her Hands by Ottessa Moshfegh. This has to deal with an elderly widow who finds a note in the woods that she lives in that says, "Her name was Magda. Nobody will ever know who killed her. It wasn't me. Here is her dead body." But there's no body around this note, and our widow becomes extremely obsessed, and I think from there it just kind of dives into unhinged territory. I don't really know what direction this book ends up taking. It's just labeled as a fiction. I don't know if we get into like horror territory or kind of very literary fiction territory. I don't know, but I'm excited to figure it out. It says we have an unreliable narrator, and knowing Ottessa Moshfegh, I'm thinking that this book is going to be extremely character driven, like stream of consciousness. The only other book I've read by Ottessa Moshfegh was My Year of Rest and Relaxation, which I did enjoy. I think I ended up giving it a 3.5. So I'm curious where this will go because that one is quite unhinged as well. That could have been a book that I read for this video, but since I've already read it, we're going to try another work by her. Then I also have Jawbone by Monica Ojeda. I'm like maybe 70% sure that this will be an unhinged type of book. Even with Death in Her Hands, I'm not like totally sure it's unhinged, but I'm like 99% sure that that book has to deal with an unhinged woman. It says, Fernanda and Annalise are so close they are practically sisters, a double image, inseparable. So how does Fernanda end up bound on the floor of a deserted cabin, held hostage by one of her teachers and estranged from Annalise? And the synopsis says a lot more, but I'm just gonna read that and go, oh, okay, bye. I'm just gonna go in with that, and I'm looking forward to it. I haven't heard too many people talk about this book. I know it was a book club pick. I just kind of avoided people's reviews on it, but I have heard certain buzzwords surrounding this book, that it's bizarre, and I like hearing that, so I'm excited. So this is one of the picks. And then the last book I have picked out from Katie Coulson's video is Just Like Mother by Anne Hetzel. I forgot I had this book, so this book is already making me stray from my fall TBR. I don't want to talk about it. It's for a good cause, okay? All I know about this is it revolves around like a cult. And that is quite literally all I know about it, and that's all I'm gonna go in knowing. I've heard very mixed things about it, and I don't even remember what I've heard about it necessarily, but I know I've heard some people really like it and some people not so much. So we will see. And also I looked on my Libby app, and this is available for my library on audiobook, so I will probably do this one through the audiobook. So those are the books I have picked out for this video. I'm not gonna lie, there are quite a few more books that I really wanted to put into this video that I think have to revolve around unhinged women, but I can't read that many in like a week, and I want to be able to get this video up pretty soon after that. So we're gonna stick to those 3 for now. If you guys really like this video, I may do a part 2 and read more books about unhinged women. If you have recommendations about books with unhinged women in them, please leave them down below. I do want to eventually also do a vlog themed around more so good for her stories. So I guess since I'm bringing that up, let me explain really quick for me what an unhinged woman is. okay? An unhinged woman for me is slightly different than like a good for her story. In an unhinged woman story, we're thinking like Bunny by Mona Awad, My Year of Rest and Relaxation by Otessa Moshfegh. Also, most recently I've read Mayfly by CJ Leede. I think that that would absolutely land in unhinged women. So these are characters that we're not necessarily rooting for. She's making questionable decisions, questionable choices, and I personally would probably not make a lot of the same choices, but I love to read about it. These tend to be unlikable characters and morally gray characters. Whereas like a good for her story is you're rooting for her, you want the best for her. She might be doing some unhinged things, but there's good reason for it, and so on and so forth. I hope that makes sense. Not to say that any of these women I won't root for, but they might, you know, have some gray morality there, might be a little bizarre, might be a little bit questionable, and might be a little bit unreliable. So we shall see. In the future, I might do a vlog focused on more so good for her stories. If you're interested in that, let me know. I would love to do that. But I'm super excited to get into these, so I'm going to start Death in Her Hands, and I will update you guys. So I am officially 100 pages into Death in Her Hands by Otessa Moshfegh, and thoughts so far, minimal thoughts. It is like I expected. It's very character driven, it's just stream of consciousness. That's pretty much all it is. We do find out our main character's name is Vesta, and so far it's pretty much what the synopsis has said, where she found this letter and she's just thinking about it a lot, and there's just a lot of other side thoughts. It's truly just stream of consciousness. She's thinking about her husband that had passed away, and she has a dog, and that's like it. We're kind of following her in her very quaint, simple daily routine that has been upturned because of this letter, and her thoughts are just kind of going off the wall, and she's thinking up all these situations and scenarios that this note could have meant. She's kind of in her head creating who this Magda person was. She's creating a character narrative for her in her own head, and again, there was no body, and she hasn't seen anything. It's just this note, and her mind has just taken it and ran wild with it. So it's very much that, and that's really it. But I am like enjoying it. I'm very curious where it's going to go, but it's definitely not going to be everybody's cup of tea. So that's kind of my thoughts so far. Nothing very deep, nothing too crazy. But I did want to open a package with you guys because I did get a package from Book Babe Designs. I will link her Instagram down below. She makes a ton of book lover merchandise, like t-shirts, but she makes hoodies, which actually she made the one I'm wearing right now. And she makes bookmarks, prints, everything and anything that you can think of. I have mugs from her, everything. So I'm going to set my microphone down, and hopefully you guys can still hear me pretty good and it's not too echoey. I actually honestly don't remember what I ended up ordering, so I'm very excited to open this up. Oh, okay. First one I see on top, I forgot. I got a mix of crew necks and t-shirts. Now that I see everything, I remember. So I got one of the crew necks. This I got in an extra large. Ooh, it smells a little funky. That's okay. That's not her. That's the manufacturer. So it says, spread love, read books, stay spooky. How cute. And it's just in like a sand color. This t-shirt actually says the exact same thing, but it's a different design. And I did get this in a medium because I wanted to kind of wear it like a normal shirt, not like an oversized shirt. But so it says the same thing, but it's a different design. I think it's so cute. So it's Bella Canvas, and I thought about maybe like cutting off the bottom, but we'll see. And I got one more t-shirt that I did get in a large for more of an oversized, which this one is also actually Bella Canvas. And it's just really pretty, like cinnamon brown color. It says, always reading, dead or alive. So this one is also Bella Canvas, which I do like comfort colors better if I'm doing like a big, large, oversized t-shirt. It's just like a thicker fabric, and I like that. But I like the Bella Canvas too, especially if it's a shirt that's not specifically just oversized bumming around type of shirt, you know? So that's everything that I got from Book Babe Designs. I just want to show you guys that. So that's all I have right now. I'm going to get back to reading. I will probably do one more reading update before my final thoughts. And yeah, so... Hi, Bean. Okay. So, I have finished Death in Her Hands by Ottessa Moshfegh. And I know I didn't give you guys any other reading updates because I just didn't have anything to say, because this is just one of those types of books that you're just confused the whole time you're reading it, and you don't really know what it's going to culminate to, and then you finish it and then you're still just kind of sitting there and pondering what you just read. And so that's what I've been doing. I actually finished this 2 days ago, and I've just been trying to gauge my feelings about this book. I left off kind of saying that the book, at least what I had read, was pretty much what the synopsis said. She just becomes very obsessed with what this note could mean, and she creates this whole narrative surrounding this Magda person who may or may not have been a real person and who may or may not have died. But she creates a whole narrative, her personality traits, her relationships, everything. She just creates this whole story surrounding Magda, and she just becomes very obsessed with it. And there is a certain point of the book where it kind of shifts from focusing on Magda and this murder mystery aspect, which don't go into this book thinking you're going to read about an older lady solving a murder mystery. That's not the case at all. But about halfway, maybe like the last third of the book, shifts a little bit into where we're not so much caring as much about Magda, but we are following Vesta as she kind of just thinks about her life, all the things that have happened that have led her to this like moment, past relationships, missed opportunities, all that kind of stuff. And she's kind of thinking about how, you know, lonely she is now and isolated in this house in the woods and all of that. So it very much shifts to just kind of being about her and what her story is now. Okay, so I guess that's like on the surface what this book is about, but you just like, you don't really understand what you're reading necessarily while you're reading it. I think the strongest aspect and most effective part of this book is that Ottessa does such a good job at blurring the line between what is reality and what Vesta is creating in her mind. And we have no way of knowing. She is a very unreliable character, and not in like a malicious, intentional way. It's just because she is so imaginative and we are stuck in her head. So she's just kind of creating stories as she goes. These lines between reality and like narrative are blurred almost too well for me personally, where some of the stuff that was happening, it almost felt like it didn't really even matter. And that's not to say that I didn't like the book either. I feel like this book was a huge metaphor for what it means to write fiction. Vesta pretty much creates this whole character, Magda, and creates a narrative, and then we don't know what's real or not, which in essence is just a fiction story. It's all make-believe at the end of the day. This whole book is make-believe at the end of the day. So it felt like a big metaphor for Vesta being an author, creating a story. This book literally felt like Ottessa just sat down and started drafting up an idea of a book, and then it just became the book, if that makes any sense. So yeah, I mean, there were things that I enjoyed. There were certain parts where this whole narrative in Vesta's head, you can see how it starts kind of seeping into reality, where you can tell certain parts where there's dialogue with other characters, I guess. At the same time, we're kind of assuming. That's the thing with this book, again, because the lines are so blurred between narrative and reality in this world, that us as readers ourselves almost take on whether or not we choose to believe what's happening or we want it to be part of Vesta's narrative as well. It felt very meta. It felt a little bit too like artsy fartsy for me. I don't think I connected with it as strongly as, say, people who give this book a 5-star. I really appreciate what it did, but at the same time, I didn't always enjoy my reading experience. There were certain points where it felt very like ominous and creepy and unsettling, but there was a lot of moments where I was just like, huh? So like, I can't say I necessarily enjoyed it the whole time. With a book like this, I feel like most of the appreciation comes at the close of the book, where you can kind of think back to it and take what you want out of it and connect the dots where you want to and pretty much create your own conclusions and your own narrative about the stuff in the book. I have like mixed feelings. I'm gonna give it 3 stars. I don't think it was bad. I think it was well written. I just didn't connect with it fully. I recommend it, but I don't recommend it to everybody. Very minimal plot and just much more vibes and what you want out of the book. But yeah. Anyways. So I finished that. Next, I'm going to jump into Jawbone by Monica Ojeda. I am really excited to get into this one. I feel like this is gonna be more for me. And I think I'm gonna like this one more, but I don't know. I don't wanna speak too soon. Oh, and it's translated. It's translated by Sarah Booker. I think it was originally written in Spanish, I want to say. Yes, first published in Spanish. So I'm going to jump into this tonight and see how far we get. It's another shorter one, but I will say the format, the font is pretty small. And also just like looking at it real quick, the formatting is a little interesting. It might be because like translation. So like these 2 pages, absolutely 0 paragraph breaks. So it's just like one huge long paragraph. So we'll see how I feel reading it formatted like that. So I'm gonna jump into this and I'll update you guys when I have some thoughts. So I am flying through this book. I needed to stop myself so I can give you guys an update. I am on page 81. I stopped at chapter 11 and I am absolutely loving this book so far. Let me talk to you guys first about kind of like the format of the book and then we'll get into like characters and stuff. So the format of the book, I will say the first few pages took me a little bit to kind of get into the writing style and the structure of this book. Let me just show you guys an example really quick. Let me turn you around. So this page here, so where my finger is, this period, everything before that is all one sentence. So this whole thing is just one big run-on sentence, and a lot of the book is like that. So it took me a little bit to get used to that. I'm not gonna lie, but I've gotten it. I'm used to it now. But I thought I would point that out. The writing style itself is extremely unique compared to a lot of things I've read before, but I do like it. There is a little bit of mixed format in the book as well, which I really like. I think it makes such a more dynamic and interesting reading experience, but it's not like too much and it's not mixed media. It's just like a little bit of mixed format here and there. So like this chapter, chapter 4, it's like a conversation between Annalise and Fernanda. There is also a chapter where Fernanda is having a conversation with her therapist, and it's structured in a similar way, but we're actually not getting the therapist side of the conversation. We're only getting Fernanda's. So I thought that that was interesting as well. So I really like that aspect. I think it creates a very unique reading experience, and I like that. The book opens up with a chapter where we are in Fernanda's POV. The whole book's written in third person, but we tend to focus on Fernanda and Miss Clara. So our first chapter is Fernanda. She's been kidnapped. She's realized she's being held as a captive. And then the next chapter actually jumps times and we're in Miss Clara's POV, and it's when she was interviewing to work at this school and the school that they all go to / teach at. is a all-girls Christian private high school, which plays a very big part in the story. And then we have another chapter where we jump to kind of the POV of all the girls, but kind of mostly from Fernanda's perspective, but it encompasses all the girls, and it's during their time in high school, taking place before Fernanda got kidnapped, but after Miss Clara started. So we're getting a mix of POV as well as jumping times, which I really like. Again, I think that that creates a really interesting dynamic read. So I'm really enjoying that. And you're just kind of trying to figure out what led up to Fernanda being held captive and so on and so forth. And you're just kind of getting little bits of the story until you can put it all together. So the format and the structure of this book is on point for me. And the characters, I really like the characters as well. So we definitely have the most understanding of Fernanda and Miss Clara, and then the second most understanding of Annalise. The other girls we don't really get as much insight into, but all of Annalise's characteristics are kind of given to us through Fernanda's POV, so it's still, you know, through a lens of another character. But Miss Clara is really interesting because her chapters almost feel like stream of consciousness, but because it's third person, it's obviously indirect. But we still get such an in-depth understanding into her like thought process and how she kind of sees the world and functions in her day-to-day. She has a lot of anxiety and is a huge overanalyzer and is quite a bit obsessive. And then the girls, they're hard to explain. So again, they're in this private Catholic school for all girls. So religion does tie quite a bit into kind of the story and the dialogue and the atmosphere that they're in. And the girls are, I would kind of like say they have quite antisocial characteristics where they are kind of purposely trying to go against what their teachers and stuff are saying to them. Fernanda purposely antagonizes her theology teacher when he's talking about God and the soul and stuff like that. And Annalise has this thing where she kind of creates her own God, and she actually has a drag queen god, and she has this whole song about her drag queen god. She drew pictures of this drag queen god and yada yada. So they are very kind of against the grain, and almost they're just kind of like bored teenagers, but they also have really questionable interests as well. The girls, they all kind of play this game that revolves around dares, and they kind of dare each other to do some pretty intense stuff sometimes. One of the girls had to like jump down a whole flight of stairs, punch each other. They kind of like really push boundaries in a lot of ways. And they say and come up with some pretty bizarre stuff too. So you're kind of like, what's going on with these girls? How dark are we getting? They have a very dark sense of humor, morbid curiosity, and a lot of other stuff that I think might come into play later on. I think it might culminate to some more bizarre stuff. It is quite a weird read. I think that there's something far deeper going on with some of the characters, and I'm really enjoying it. So that's my update. Like, if I had to rate it right now, it feels like it's gonna be a 5-star, and I'm like really excited if it's going to be. And I'm just like, I'm excited to get back into it and keep reading. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to get back into it, keep reading, and I will keep you guys updated. So this is quite possibly the worst lighting situation I've ever been in, and I'm sorry, but I'm literally in a parking garage. I got to work like way too early, and I really need to give you guys some reading updates before I get any further in these books, because I have less than 50 pages left of Jawbone. So I wanted to give you guys some updates before I forget what I want to say. So I'm still really, really enjoying it. So there is a chapter that came up, chapter 13, and quite literally the whole thing is just like one big paragraph, like there's no breaks in it. And it was a really interesting chapter, like format and writing wise, because we were getting two stories at the same time. So we're being told like the story of what the girls are doing. They like end up going to like this college party. So we're living through this college party with them, but at the same time we're also simultaneously getting a second story told to us from the past. And it literally jumps like sentence to sentence. One character saying something and then the next sentence is immediately in the context of the other story, if that makes sense. So I just thought that that was really interesting. It was almost done in like, like those types of movies. If you've ever seen, what was it called? With Adam Sandler, the Gemstone one, where the like dialogue, you hear all the background noise, like there's just kind of like a lot going on. It was almost overstimulating, but like less so because you're controlling what you're reading. But it was just a really unique experience reading that chapter, and I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really good and unique and cool. We also end up getting a chapter from Annalise's POV, where she actually wrote Miss Clara a letter. So it's in like first person in that sense. So there has been a few chapters that are in like first person. So we did end up getting a chapter from Annalise's POV, and it was pretty, it's like a chapter that I alone would just reread that chapter a couple of times. And I just really enjoyed it. There was a lot of discussion around this kind of transformative period for people where they're not in childhood and they're not in adulthood, and this kind of like teenagerhood area where it kind of really solidifies who the person ends up being as an adult. I really liked the way that that chapter was written and what it was saying and the discussion points that were being brought up. It also links in a lot of kind of like female sexuality in those formative years, and also because we're dealing with like these religious aspects and these girls' families tend to be kind of more on the religious side. There's a lot of guilt built into their sexuality. These girls, they are really into, specifically Annalise, is really into like creepypastas, making up these horror stories, and within these stories she tends to kind of explore those sentiments and kind of relates a lot of mother-daughterhood relationships. Our one character, Miss Clara, is kind of becoming more and more paranoid and may or may not be like losing touch with reality, but it's been such a interesting, unique, and fun read. Like, I'm really, really enjoying it. I love the writing so much. So I will definitely probably be finishing this tonight, because when I do sit to read it, I read it pretty fast. I do also have a lot of tabs, which like tells you a lot right there. Sorry if my like card charm is distracting. I was trying to flip it up over my mirror, but I want to get out of the way. But anyways, I have one more book to talk about. I forgot to tell you guys that I started this book. So I did end up starting the audiobook for Just Like Mother by Anne Hetzel. I'm already 70% of the way in. Sorry. With audiobooks, I just like totally forget to update you guys all the time. But anyways, so let me give you guys like a better synopsis than just it has to deal with a cult, because I can tell you a little bit more about it now. So the very first chapter, we are introduced to our main characters of the story, and the main character is Maeve, and then she also has a cousin named Andrea, and they are little girls when we open up the story. They're in this kind of cultish environment, and they end up getting like rescued and taken out of it very early on. And then we flash forward to them as women. They have gone separate ways. They have grown up doing different things, and they reconnect through like a, ancestry.com, some type of like DNA thing. They reconnect through like that. And our main character, Maeve, she is like a publisher. No, not a publisher. She works at a publishing company as an editor, which I do like when books have little bookish aspects to them, so that was cool. And then Andrea is like this really high-tech kind of gal who started this company called New Life, and they kind of create and make these fake baby dolls, but they're very realistic, and they're meant to help women who either want to start a family to kind of like, I guess, practice with, or if they lost a child for like a grieving process, or whatever else they feel like they might need. So she's like in that company, and that's like a thing. So anyways, it's so far has read very much like a thriller, and I think about 40% of the way in, I kind of figured I have an idea where it's going. And I'm just kind of, at this point, waiting for it to get there, because that's just me with thrillers. Had I known it was more of a thriller, I may not have been super into it. Just thrillers are really difficult for me because I feel like I'm just being patronized the whole time. So it's not like an amazing reading journey. But we'll see. Maybe if like I'm really thrown for a loop, it might end up being better. It's not a bad book. It's a really easy listen for audiobooks. So I like that. And yeah, I don't really know what else to say about it. It's really kind of takes on this whole motherhood, and obviously, I mean, you would assume that because it's called just like Mother. But yes, I will confirm that it does kind of take on a lot of discussion, I guess, about motherhood and how some women really want it, some don't, and so on and so forth. I will say, if you want like a true cult book, it's not necessarily very cult-like. Now, it is because the girls did come from a cult, and we do get a couple of chapters where we're flashing back to them in that cult house, and a few flashbacks of Maeve because she got quickly adopted when she was taken out of the cult house. And we have a couple flashbacks of Maeve in her adoptive family's house, and so we get a little bit of like the after effects of the cult life. I do wish we got more flashbacks. We see it how it's like deeply rooted into their adulthood, but it's kind of like a background story. Don't go into it wanting to be completely immersed in this like cult life. Don't go into it wanting like page for page cult life. I think we'll get a lot more in the last 30% because it's pretty much been avoided for most of the book, and I feel like it is such a rooted thing for these characters, so it has to come back up. So I'm just kind of waiting for that. It's reading like a 3-star for me right now, but we'll see. A lot could happen in 30%. We'll see where it goes. So that's it for now. I'm gonna go to work, and I will update you guys next once I'm done with the books with my final thoughts. So all the books have now been read, and I have some final thoughts. We will start with Just Like Mother by Anne Hetzel. So the story did end up going where I very early on predicted it would go, but it did end up going a little bit further than that. But I can't necessarily say that that's a good thing. I don't think I really liked where it went. I don't know. This was quite a meh read for me overall, just a big meh. After a lot of the stuff transpired, I feel like what I thought was going to be a message or a goal of this book got very murky and just was lost with a lot of the final act scenarios. It's not like I need all of my books to have a clear message, but this just kind of had nothing really going for it. I already struggle with thrillers. I just don't really like them. I just don't really get into them. And there was no message for me to connect to. The characters were fine, but like I didn't care that much about them either. And it was just a book that I read at the end of the day, honestly. I think I'm going to give it 2.5. I feel like that's a little harsh because like I didn't hate it, but there's like pretty much nothing about it that I really liked that much either. So yeah, the writing was okay. The writing was fine. 2.5, I read it. It happened. Now, the star of the video, Jawbone by Monica Ojeda. Now, I will say, just like Mother probably was even worse to me because I was listening to that while I was physically reading this book and this book. Oh, this book. So I will just summarize and say I loved the writing. It is such a unique story. It really pushes boundaries. The characters are just so dimensional and just insightful. I haven't felt like this with a book since I read Bunny by Mona Awad, which also just did something to me. This book has changed my brain chemistry in the best of ways. And I loved it. I ended up reading the translator's note at the end. It literally gave me chills. That might be dramatic, but I'm not lying. It was just such an amazing experience the entire time I was reading it. It's so unique. I don't necessarily recommend this to everybody. I think you have to be into somewhat abstract and definitely bizarre, at times disturbing types of books, and it does lean into kind of literary horror, but I loved it. I really did. This is absolutely going to be in my top 10 of 2023. It might be in my number one spot. I don't know yet. There's still more to be read this year, but it was fantastic, so good, and I loved it. Oh, and it goes without saying, but 5 stars. So just to recap all the books that we read, I will say Jawbone, obviously in the number 1 spot. Death in Her Hands, number 2. I might raise this to a 3.5. The more I think about it, the more I do appreciate what this book did. And I think especially after reading Just Like Mother, it's just such a whatever book that I appreciate this one even more now because it's like, at least it did something. It did something different. And I'm not trying to totally shit on this book, but if you just want like mindless entertainment, there you go. 2.5 in 3rd place. As far as the goal for this video to read about unhinged women, I would say that these all definitely met that criteria. Now, I will say Death in Her Hands was probably the least, like, quote unquote, unhinged of the books. Definitely still an unhinged woman, but not in a vindictive or manipulative or ill-intended type of way. She's not purposely being unhinged or unreliable. So these two fit the bill to a T, where we have unhinged women with bad intentions, questionable motives, and I probably wouldn't want to be friends with a lot of the people in these 2 books, but I would be friends with Vesta. So again, if you've read or know of any books that have to deal with unhinged women, let me know in the comments down below, and we can kind of get a little bit of a thread going with some recommendations for this subgenre. Now, as promised, I'm giving you guys a sneak peek of the books that I will be reading for my cozy horror themed reading vlog. I don't know when that's going to go up. I did say it will probably be my next one, but I think I lied. I think I'm going to do one more before that one. But that being said, I already have 2 books picked out for that vlog. We're going to do Cackle by Rachel Harrison and then We Sold Our Souls by Grady Hendrix. And I want you guys to help me pick out the 3rd book because I want to do another one with 3 books in it. So I have 3 other books to choose from. So comment down below which one you want me to read for the cozy horror. We have Gallows Hill by Darcy Coates. The Girl from Raw Blood by Catriona Ward. This is like a backlist book from her. And then we have another Grady Hendrix to pick from, and that is How to Sell a Haunted House. So if you would like me to read any of these 3 books in the cozy horror vlog, or if you have a suggestion for a different book, please let me know. I'm totally open to that. These are just all the ones that I found on my shelf that I think would fit that prompt. So that is everything that I have for this vlog. Thank you so much for spending some of your time with me while I read and talk about books. If you haven't yet, please give the video a like, subscribe for future content, turn on the bell notification, all the fun YouTube things that help your girl out, and I will catch you guys in the next video. Bye!